Okay, guys, welcome to A Lot Going On with Raj Katecha. And today's episode, as we know, is an episode where we're coming back after a long time. Because when I say that the episode's called A Lot Going On, it's because it's a reflection of my real life. And we've just had so much stuff going on at Creative Content Agency. Yet at the same time, as we build up ALGO as a brand that's going to sit alongside all the rest of our brands, we obviously can't ignore it. And I'm obviously so keen to produce more content. And so what we're going to do for the next few episodes, and I'll explain more of this as the episode goes on, is that we're actually going to change up the format a little bit. We'll still be talking about a lot of stuff that's going on with the world, but we might go through less subjects and in more depth. And by way of making this approach something that we think you're going to find valuable, I'm bringing on a co-host who is a longtime collaborator of mine, somebody who started off interning with me more than a decade ago. It's Arjun, aka Manchild, the producer. How are you, Arjun?
Manchild, the producer. I'm good, man. How are you?
Really positive and glad that you're able to step in for a few episodes. So I spoke to Vic a bit earlier on this week. I was like, Vic, it would be irresponsible for you to put your energy anywhere other than where it is at the moment. And I think you and I have spoken about some of the projects that he's been working on. So I think for him, he's going to be head down. Otherwise, it's going to mean sacrificing other aspects of his already precious time. And so we came up with this idea where you and I spoke recently, Arjun, as we tend to do every 3 to 6 months, and we kind of go into
Yeah.
depth and do a bit of a State of the Union. And then we thought, okay, these could be good episodes to put out because of the fact that the world is changing so rapidly. But before we get into some of those things that we're going to focus on, as well as some kind of questions and unearthing some of the conversations we've had over the last decade plus, for a bit of context, why don't you tell people what you do now and a little bit about how we first connected, you and I?
In the opposite direction. So I think what I do now started from how we connected. We met through one of my close family members introduced me to you because I had no idea what I was going to do for the rest of my life. 17 years old. For context, I'm now 29. So yeah, it's wild. You said more than a decade because it never feels more than like 3-4 years. Um, and so over the last 10 years, me and you have worked together, in fact, very closely, all the way from coming to Dubai when you've been in Dubai. And then obviously you haven't been very far from me. And so we used to, I actually remember following you with a camera, even before that, doing more PA kind of stuff. And then more recently, I now head up the advertising function of an influencer agency. Um, I produce and plan podcasts for clients. And I recently launched a business that's more focused towards the wedding industry and the audio guest books that maybe we can talk about at some point. But yeah, I'm really just a content head, a decade with you and potentially even a decade behind you at the same time, which is quite an exciting place to be.
Yeah, that's a good way of framing it. I've never heard anybody say content head before. That's a cool that'd be a cool name for somebody's podcast, I'm sure. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna get into some of the fundamentals. But yeah, as you rightly said, 12 years ago, I remember specifically you were like that you wanted to go to university and check that box just as a young brown boy, which is important to
Yeah.
young young guys and Indian families in London specifically. So but you said you wanted to do audio engineering, and I was like, well, perfect. There's a whole audio engineering school called SAE where you can go to university, you can get your degree, and it would be the same as going to a specialist school, like if you're a doctor. So you'll still get the cachet in society. So you did that, and then the first project you worked on, I think, was the mastering of My Beatha, which came out in 2012. And then after
Yes.
that, 2013, we went into Vayner World One, and then we did a lot of stuff for Social
No, we
Media
did
Week
the
when they came
conference.
over from New York.
You remember Music is
Yeah,
Dead?
yeah, Music is Dead. It was all in that first year, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of like as soon as you were out of university, we got straight into it. From like 2011, 2012 onwards, it was a really crazy time. So that was a good amount of time that you spent with me, plus 3 months out here in Dubai, and we've done so many projects back and forth. You did a whole bunch of episodes. Well, you were basically the producer of OPP with Fat Man Scoop and myself, and that's where you got the name Manchild. Since then, you've probably done north of 1,000, maybe 2,000 podcasts, including Planet FPL with my longtime partner and collaborator Serge, which is all about football.
Episodes, not actual shows. That
Yeah,
would be wild. That'd be a wild number. Yeah, easily. I think FPL's I mean, they were pumping out 20, 30 episodes a week at the height of what we were doing. So yeah, I think we hit that
Who
number
was
quite
with
easy.
Planet FPL?
Planet FPL was pumping out 30 episodes a week, which is for a podcast. Anyone that's in the podcasting space, I can see by the change in your face, that's a wild number to hit.
Yeah. Nice. And then also, and as a result of that, and I think this is the reason why we can actually have this conversation as peers, is that as you kind of broke out, and obviously we're not geographically in the same place anymore, but as you broke out, we've obviously even been able to teach each other stuff as well. So I remember one time we were editing and you started editing backwards so as not to damage, like for those who've ever done any video editing, if you edit from the beginning to the end, each change that you make affects all the future changes you'll make if they are already preset and time coded. Whereas if you edit backwards, you don't affect what's in front of it chronologically. So if you're a video nerd, that's either changed your life or makes complete sense. So there's been times I think where we've been able to do that. And I think it does take at least 10 years. I noticed it with other folks as well. It does take at least 10 years before you can really look at somebody who you've worked with or that's mentored you and be able to kind of meet them where they're at. I've seen it with obviously with other people as well that have gone on to do great things. So it's a pleasure to have you on, and we're gonna get into some bits and pieces. Maybe we start with a State of the Union, or maybe we start with a couple of questions that you said you wanted to bring, and then whichever one we start with, we'll just kind of bounce off of that. You said you had one just before we started recording.
Let's go for State of the Union, actually. What's going on right now? Because I have a question, but it's a very relevant question to the time. But I think you got to figure out where we are first.
Okay, so where we are today is April the 2nd. Shout out to my dad; it's his birthday today.
Happy birthday.
We're in we're about a year into like the Ukraine-Russia conflict, which has kind of sent oil prices haywire. It's caused a big issue when it comes to cost of living in the UK. Here in Dubai, it's led to a massive amount of immigration and rental prices going up as a place which has been quite welcoming to all people of all parts of the world. And then from a technological perspective, content continues to become an even bigger part of even more businesses' lives. I think it's managed to kind of seep into so many industries that didn't originally think about themselves as companies or brands that would be driven by content. And then off the back of that, we've also seen this kind of like current winner when we look at the different content formats that are running the race at the same time. One that seems to have broken out at the front of the marathon, the Kenya or Ethiopia contender, if you will, is like vertical short form video is the one that's kind of like killing it. That's the one that's like, whether you go on Netflix and you check out Netflix as a joke, or whether you check out Spotify, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram, they're all kind of over indexing on short form content under a minute. So that's where we are at the moment. And then of course AI has just entered the chat. AI has just stepped in the room. Post ChatGPT 3.5, we've now got this tool that seems to be enhancing everybody's abilities when it comes to producing content, especially the stuff that people don't like. AI has become like the housemaid. If it, as you know, AI is basically a housemaid. AI is the kind of tool that would not do everything to the level that you would do it if you had the time to clean your own house, but will roughly get your house to like the 80% mark. So what I mean by that is that it will write your YouTube descriptions. It will write your TikTok descriptions. It will take you to the 8 out of 10 mark. And then you might still need to go around a little while after the maid's left and kind of like touch up a little bit of dust behind the TV, or a little bit on the like kind of like light switches to get to that kind of like perfect level. But they will definitely do the brunt of the heavy lifting. So that's where we are at the moment. That was what I would say when it comes to the State of the Union and what's catching my attention. That's where we are. What's your State of the Union, factoring in the fact that you're spending big budgets on advertising and you're making content?
I actually really like the analogy of the housemaid, first of all. Like, and especially we talk about this a fair amount, which is keeping with the housemaid. If you've never cleaned your house before, you're going to think that an 80% maid did a 100% job, especially if you don't know where you're looking. State of the Union for me, I think the biggest one is in advertising and marketing. First signs of recession are really kicking through. Like, budgets are starting to get a little more, what's the word? People are being a little more cautious with how they spend their money. TikTok, which has been really killing it for the past 6 months. Like, if you've ever spent any pennies on Facebook in the last 10 years, the prices have been what they were on Facebook in 2015, 2016, and them going up in front of the government is a bit nervous because of, you know, a lot of strategies that we built last year and a lot of the learning that people are doing is now potentially in question. Twitter continues to be a really interesting place. What's going on?
Twitter's comeback would be post Trump, post crypto, right? So from 2016 onwards, a lot of American media used Twitter to kind of gauge what was going on because Trump had so much of the narrative. Then when it came to crypto, that just seemed to be like the kind of like free speech place. And then when crypto was like a really, really mainstream subject and Web3 was, a lot of that chatter was happening there. It looks like it's kind of been, I'd say maybe one of the first things to look at right now is the rollout of verification and just the changing role of verification in society. Because if you look at the fact that now you've got Meta verified and you've got Twitter verified, Twitter being a really extreme example because they're actually taking away the blue check from people that got it off merit and are now saying you need to pay for it. And so the question is, if the blue check was always associated to merit and a verification that stemmed from the platform, and it now is not about merit, it's about paying for it, and that stems from the user, does that blow verification out forever? I think it's something that a lot of brands and a lot of personal brands really, really need to think about, because a lot of personal brands that can now go and get the blue check that are paying for it, you know, in some cases $180 a year if you're paying $15 a month for it, you're thinking, is this finally going to put me in the league of people that have traditionally had the blue check? And what's going to happen is you're going to go from somebody who's never had it to somebody who's got it, and by the time you get there, it's like getting to a festival just as the main actors come off. Like you've literally arrived at Reading Festival and Travis Scott's just walked off and you're like, hang on a second, this is a VIP all access pass, but the main actors just come off stage, meaning that all of the upside that you thought you were going to get from it by being somebody who can have it that nobody else does no longer applies to you.
I think the blue check was always meant as an identity verification, right? You get big enough that people are copycatting your accounts, and then the blue check is just, this is the one and only account. And then it's also got like societal implications that we've just attached to it, which is, oh, if you've got a blue check, you must be, because there are people with blue checks with much less than 10,000 followers. I think it's just balancing it. They're going to have to find a new way to verify accounts to stop, you know, like if on Instagram you're seeing like wild amount of hacked accounts and whatnot. And so that, and especially with them now making the blue check something that you can pay for. But then on Twitter, I think it kind of balances it out. The way I think of it now is, when I first started as a photographer, it wasn't that easy to buy a camera. And so there was like, if you owned an SLR by merit of, if anyone saw you walking around with that, you were just viewed as a photographer. And it's the same thing with a blue tick, whereby if you just had one, you were viewed as important. But now anyone can have one. It's about what you actually post. And I think it just shifts some of the authenticity or maybe some of even who you are back into what actually matters, which is the content. Irrespective of a blue tick, are you posting good shit?
Yeah. I think it's going to be one to watch because we've now got a situation whereby the blue tick would obviously act as like a magnifying glass. Like there are so many kind of like snake oil salespeople and hornswogglers online that do what they do, and they're gonna now get the blue check, and you're gonna be like, well, is this gonna give you additional reach? And you're right. What happens if you're just generally rubbish at content? You put the blue check on yourself, and then the platform figures out that even with a blue check, we can only give this person so much distribution. So I think it's a mess, and I don't think it's come from an organic place. You know, I really feel like if they'd not gone near this holy grail, which is the blue check, and just created something else, whether it's a key or a lock or a this or a that or something, to say, hey, listen, this has been verified, or some sort of ID, then that would have been fine, and then the blue check would have been this upper tier that sits above it. But because I'd have 100% paid, I'd today on Instagram, I wouldn't feel incentivized to pay $15 for a blue check because I've never had one, and now I don't want it because I have to pay for it. So the social contract between you and Instagram has changed as to what gets you to get one. But tomorrow, if they came along and said like, they had some sort of symbol, which I'm sure a creative person could come up with, that just says this person's paid for their own identity to be verified, I'd go with that all day long. All day long.
Right.
And if that was $3 to $5, that's an easy business write-off.
Because the blue check is, or the blue tick is so ingrained, we know what it is, and now it's almost weird. Like I forget that people are paying for it even to this day, because I'm so used to it meaning like you've gone through the motions of being important enough that people are trying to copy you. I think where the problem begins is where they drop the requirements of what's needed for, like, it can't just be money to get this thing. Like if they had just made everyone who currently has it switch to a payment plan, I don't think anyone would have been against it, because you get to keep what you've earned. But now it's like anyone can have what you've earned, so why did you even bother earning it in the first place? It's like when a game becomes freemium after you've paid like $29.99 for it the last week. You're like, oh fuck, did I even pay for this? Like, I got a question.
Yeah.
Would you, for any of like, even like you've got your own profiles, and then you've got the, like, for example, my friends, your friends, you've got the four Ps that will inevitably have, I imagine, its own place. Would you consider the blue check for any of the brands that you run, or even yourself?
The risk that the platforms have in that situation is how much of the blue check is responsible for attributing a sale. And for me, the platforms never have thus far been the reasons why I can attribute a sale. More often it's because I'm involved in the sale and I personally push the sale through. So I can't think of a situation whereby I've completely exhausted all of my biz dev opportunities to the point whereby I now need this bit of visual merchandise to help push it through. So I don't think that is the case, that I would need to. I don't think I'd necessarily need to. And again, when you start looking at scaling this out, like people like us, we own multiple domains, right? And every year, GoDaddy or whoever your domain provider is like, would you like to pay privacy protection? And you're like, yeah, $8-9, it's not a problem. But then you realize that you've got 30 domains, and you're like, hang on a second, my annual, like, you add this to your OPEX, and it's significant. So I think that's one thing that is potentially a problem, is that if you do run multiple accounts, or you're what's known as a multi-channel network, and you're picking up the tab to do it on all of them, I don't think it's necessarily the right move for them. I think it's going to be a very, very tricky time for brands to figure out what kind of relationship they want to have on an individual basis with verification.
Right.
So for us,
in the space that I'm in, we talk a lot about how people are viewing the profiles that they're purchasing from, like what the behavioral science is behind what's going on when you actually interact with profiles, or what you do on the internet. What's really interesting about what you said about it being a piece of visual merchandise, and then also integrating the fact that it's something that you used to have to achieve. I would now be more impressed if I saw an account with like 4 or 5 million followers without the blue tick. It's almost now just flipped around and done the opposite of what it initially did, because I'm like, well, you haven't paid for the additional reach or whatever bonus that you get from the platform, and you're still here. Which used to be the other way around, which is like, you got this big and you're verified. It's like you got this big and now you're not.
Yeah, that's a very good point. If you do see an account with that many, and you know that the only thing stopping them from having a blue check is $15, but they've still got 330,000 followers, you're like, geez, that's actually a ironic double flex. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to be cool to like not have check after a while, and it's actually done the opposite, because some of the bigger accounts who might not even need it, right? Like if you're already grown, you don't need the check to grow. Like 10xing on 1 million followers is way harder than 10xing on 1,000, and so the blue check might not have much of an impact there. And so a lot of the bigger accounts.
Go ahead.
No, that's
I was going to say another interesting thing as well at the same time when it comes to social media profiles is the fact that we are now potentially going to have another Vine moment, which is that if TikTok was to get banned, we've now got people already that are big on TikTok actively thinking about ways to take that audience, move it to email, move it to YouTube Shorts, move it to Instagram Reels, and divest from the platform. And the interesting thing about divesting when it comes to social media, because when you have your social media platforms, it is a portfolio approach. You think, I've got this many followers on Instagram, this many on TikTok, this many on YouTube Shorts. It's almost like you're thinking about where you've got capital. But the interesting thing about a user is that you don't necessarily have to remove a user from one platform to put them on another. They can be on TikTok whilst you've got TikTok, but by also joining your YouTube Shorts, that user has kind of somewhat duplicated. And so you could actually transfer that user without, in a binary sense, losing them from the platform that you've got them on. And I think when you start looking at things like verification, when you start looking at things like platforms that, significant platforms like YouTube that have done stuff that no other social media platform has done in recent history, now potentially being banned, there's very little that's predictable on a 6-month window when it comes to social media trends. And I think creators are being very, very cognizant of that, is that they just don't know what curveball is going to come next. And so they're kind of preparing for every eventuality. We've got a lot of like, let's create a bunker mentality in social media at the moment. I'm thinking about it. I feel overexposed on Instagram at the moment. I feel like there's too many of my followers there, even though I've got 1.5, 1.6 on YouTube and several, many hundreds or thousands of others on different platforms. I am now looking at that, and I think I've just hired a new operations person, and her job is going to be on a weekly basis to just kind of almost just like my fund manager, as my follower manager, being like, look, this is where your followers are, and this is what we're seeing on each of the platforms, so that I can think about, do I want to give one of these platforms or another platform more love? How you do that, media types, format types, what you talk about, that's almost like a second order consideration, but just looking at it from a high level binary point of view.
Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite platform at the moment? Or like a place that actually you do feel comfortable having followers that isn't...
Yeah, the ROI of Instagram for me is really real.
Still.
Like it's really, it's really, really real. Right? For a couple of reasons. Number one, I know for a fact, looking at the numbers from a quant basis, that the brand ALGO is doing better as a result of micros going onto social media than it is as a result of the people consuming the long form. So ironically, just before we stopped making ALGO for the month of March, because I was in Amsterdam, I was traveling, and we took on one of our biggest clients, I had a clip go viral. I don't know if you saw this. So there's a platform called Earn Your Leisure, which is a super big channel in the culture when it comes to financial literacy, has deep ties in African American culture and hip hop. And it's just wonderful. Probably one of the most important media platforms in the world today. And they took a clip where I was talking about Beyonce and the fact that I felt that 24 million was affordable. Yeah. And I felt like 24 million, if you divide that amongst the return that brand Dubai is going to get, that the hotel is going to get, that actually it's not a tremendous investment. And then that got picked up by this media channel, Earn Your Leisure. Shout out to Rashad and Troy. Rashad is a friend. And they posted it, and it did over 200K views, which then added over 300 people to my already 5,000 followers. And those people have stuck around. So I think Reels for me has been incredible. TikTok, I do not enjoy the UI so much that I haven't gone all in on it. A lot of my clients have gone all in on it and seen incredible results. And I will go all in on it. But I think for me, and I've had this realization recently as well, is that like, maybe, because you know me when I was younger, you know me when I was in my late 20s, I would have the time to like literally sit down and tinker personally on each of these platforms and come up with my way of, planning for them, producing, publishing, and promoting on them. But now I'm also running a real business. Like the one thing that I realized when I went to VaynerMedia and I spent time with Team Gary Vee is that, he's got channel managers, and he's had them. He's had them for ages, where a YouTube specialist specifically runs his YouTube, a TikTok specialist specifically runs his TikTok, and they are their job description and what's considered their KPIs points directly back to what that platform is there to do and the audience that sits behind that platform. So for me, I've never had like a channel manager. I've always been my own channel manager, which means that at a certain point, there's only a certain amount of channels that I can handle, regardless of the opportunity on the other side of it. And the opportunity at TikTok has been sizable, especially the last 2 to 3 years, that I've just been like, okay, this is something that's going to have to go, because the reality is I could have got huge on TikTok, but TikTok for me is just a brand, which is Raj Architecture on TikTok. But if I've already got Raj Architecture on Instagram, Raj Architecture on YouTube, they're probably where my two focus areas are. Then to a lesser extent, Raj Architecture on LinkedIn and TikTok. But then I've also got other real brands that I'm pumping, because I've got like ALGO in general. I've got My Friends, Your Friends, which is by far and away like the unicorn brand in our portfolio. Then I've got Creative Content Agency. Then I've got 4 Pieces of Content, which is I think I'm the only person in the game right now that's actually like trying to push a model, like a framework. Everybody else has got like, Simon Sinek's got his like, what's your why? And everyone's kind of like pushing a thesis, whereas I'm specifically trying to push a framework, which has not been done since the days of like, Porter's 5 Forces and stuff like that. So yeah, there will be sacrifices, but I think right now, because the business is going through a bit of a growth spurt at the moment, we will be investing time into maybe bringing those content platforms up to speed, because I do want the 100,000 followers that I could potentially have on TikTok if I put my effort there. It's just that I've got real businesses to run. Like I've got real things going on at all times. So it's like, how much time do you put into it?
Where do you produce your content? Like, where do you make it? Do you still use Final Cut, or do you even use the the app features to produce a piece?
I use Final Cut predominantly.
Yeah,
that's my weapon of choice for clients and for myself. Then I use CapCut sometimes. If I can get a piece of content right, I will still, if I can, if I'm going for a walk or whatever, I'll still try and record it natively into the app. So if I'm doing an Instagram story, I will still try and record the Instagram story. I did see a creator talk about the fact that they were on an Instagram call recently, and Instagram was saying that if your video was if the last software that your video was in at the point of it being rendered, which obviously that metadata is saved inside the video, was TikTok or CapCut, that Instagram recognizes that metadata in the encryption and the encoding of the video and will not give you the reach. So for me, I'm trying to do everything as much as possible natively inside Final Cut or in my iPhone, and then moving it over to Instagram. What I don't want it to do is have the final point of editing to have any kind of tattoo or like smears or streaks of CapCut or any of the kind of like Chinese apps, because I know that Instagram's not going to look on that favorably when it comes to deciding how much reach you want to give me, because Instagram's going to factor all of that data in.
Here's a question for you, and maybe it's just a whole subtopic on social media conspiracy theories. Things that like we know that the platforms that have not admitted, but we all think are going on, like getting shadow banned, or like if it was edited in TikTok. Like I don't see why necessarily Instagram would stop you uploading content from another platform. Maybe it just is that because right. So you said something earlier, right? Which is you've got YouTube Raj, you've got Instagram Raj, and you don't have TikTok Raj. But if you were to try and upload Instagram Raj to TikTok, you know what would happen. It wouldn't work. Maybe it's not that the platform's deprioritizing you. Maybe it's just you're trying to post shit from another platform that's completely different onto Instagram, and it doesn't work. Like you can't just dance around on, well, you can, but in the same way that you did on TikTok on Instagram and expect it to work the same. I don't think there's this giant conspiracy theory against where it's uploaded from, because then it kind of it'd be too easy to get around it, right? Like, and I'd argue that some of the people that are really hacking the platforms, where they're producing like 5, 6, 10 pieces of content a day, that's not happening on the app. That's happening like behind the scenes, and it might even tie into what we're talking about with AI, because there is so much tech that is involved in scaling up. People are saying, like, not even saying, we know that in order to become big on TikTok, you got to post like 5, 6, 7 times a day. That's a lot of content to be like, your thumbs get tired. It's not the same as having a laptop. But like, I don't
let me ask you a scenario. Let me ask you a scenario then. So to your point about conspiracy theories when it comes to social media, for the sake of this exercise, let me make you Adam Mosseri, CEO of Instagram, who recently has been on a charm offensive by putting out weekly updates of things that are going on with the product that he's responsible for, which is a very post Clubhouse thing. The Clubhouse folks used to do a call every Saturday, Sunday around that time to say, here's what's working and what's not working on Clubhouse. So Facebook has adopted that, one, because they're under massive scrutiny from the government, but two, because this whole build it in public thing gives them more like startup vibes. That aside, let me make you the CEO temporarily. If I say to you right now, you're aware of the fact that this video is being uploaded has metadata inside the actual file of the video that suggests that it's already been uploaded to TikTok. It went up to TikTok, it got downloaded from TikTok, and now it's coming onto your platform and it's non-exclusive content. Are you going to incentivize that lower, higher, or even? If there's an absolute case for it, if it's an international sensation moment like the Will Smith slap, yeah, maybe you might do it. But for the most part, if you feel like you're getting sloppy seconds from TikTok, you're not going to give it premium distribution. Now let me pitch you one more thing. A lot of my friends who are big influencers, big down to medium influencers, have been posting on their Instagram, hey guys, just let you know, if you've been getting DMs from me asking for crypto payments or it's a fake account. Please don't follow it. Please report it. How interesting that this would be something that normal people are becoming concerned with and influencers are becoming concerned with at a time when they know that verification is coming around the corner. Wouldn't you, if you felt like 15 fake accounts had been set up about you and you're a business coach or a Bhangra dancer, think to yourself heading into this time, maybe I should actually look this gift horse in the mouth and take it? Like, actually, it's the same as with iPhone. I believe Apple is going through a court case right now because so much of Apple's camera, what it does is done through software. And all of a sudden, when you fall 2 generations behind on your iPhone, which I've noticed with my iPhone as well, I'm on iPhone 12, but iPhone is out on iPhone 14. All of a sudden, my cameras don't slap the way, my images don't punch the way that they used to. And I'm like, maybe I should upgrade. So the amount of, I don't think it is a conspiracy theory. Why? Because all of these companies, maybe not TikTok, because I don't know what the trading status is of TikTok at the moment in terms of on NASDAQ or whatever. But whether you look at Apple, whether you look at Facebook, whether you look at Google, whether you look at whatever, no matter what their vision of the future is, or no matter what their vision of ethics and morals is, on a quarterly basis, they've still got to report to Wall Street what their profits have been. And if they're not acting in the best interests of their profits, then they are absolutely not going to be able to get the results that they want. And we've seen what happens when stocks go up and down, right? No matter how long-term or how ethical these platforms even want to be, or even what's best for the product, they are somewhat chained in the basement to the radiator that is their stock performance. And so sometimes they have to do things which are a little bit cunning. And it's only when they get caught out and they get taken to court that it becomes something that the world becomes aware of. And in the meantime, it's just chatter amongst tech enthusiasts like us being like, well, what is a conspiracy theory and what's not?
Yeah. Like, I want to believe you. I just, it's still, all right. So your scenario of, would you upweight it, downweight?
Well, choose one. Yeah. Choose the upweight, downweight, or rank even.
Because where the content came from is not a factor in how successful it would be. I have always maintained the position that the number one goal of Instagram is just to keep you on Instagram. That's it. Like the real metric that the metric that they used to post is how long users are spending on the platform, because that directly affects how many ads you can see. If you only spend 30 seconds.
But Arjun, that's from a time pre-TikTok. If there's literal TikTok branding on a clip that you let go viral on your platform, you are running brand impressions for TikTok. So people are on Instagram being like, I really like this clip. It's got 2 million views. I really like this clip. It's got 5 million views. I really like this clip. It's got 7 million views. What do they all have in common? Because one is about skateboarding, one is about cooking, and one is about swimming with sharks. They've all got the TikTok brand on it. Maybe if I go over to TikTok, I'm going to get way more of this content, because guess what's happening on Instagram? You're getting these amazing viral moments, but then you're also getting all the rest of the trash. So you start to think to yourself, oh, hang on a second. This is pretty good stuff. But then, actually, what TikTok's doing, like what the genius move of TikTok, sorry to cut you off, the genius move of TikTok was to allow people to natively download content from TikTok once it had been uploaded. TikTok then does the branding of it. It basically it white labels the content, lets you download it and spread it far and wide. And then what happens? You actually become a flyer boy or a flyer girl for TikTok by taking content from TikTok and sharing it on your WhatsApp status, which we've all seen, sharing it inside your messaging platforms like WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, which we've all seen, sharing it on other platforms like YouTube Shorts and Instagram, which we've all seen. So I think from that point of view, them being like, F it, take it, is just not a bad move for them.
Yeah. I mean, as much as I'm playing it, I think there is something going on there, but I'm not discounting that. Look, if there is machine learning going on at all times, they are scanning and looking at your videos. I'm convinced of. And so if there is, if you just think of learning as a general, across every single video, if there is a high exit rate on videos that have the TikTok logo, then yeah, it makes sense to down prioritize it. But that's more of a meritocratical, you know the word I'm trying to say here, decision than it is a direct like fu to TikTok. It's not like, oh, we didn't want to. But if our goal is to keep people on the platform, and what you just said is true, that people are leaving the platform as a result of seeing 2 or 3, yeah, of course, then we'll downplay it, and that's not them. And that in that sense is less malicious competitiveness and then more competitiveness on just trying to stay number one. I also feel like Instagram and Facebook less so, has been one. I think they benefit from TikTok because they needed the competition, like pulling in the formats, simple things, right? As a creator, if TikTok didn't exist with the stupid reach numbers that you could get, I don't think Instagram reach would be starting to like, you wouldn't be seeing these like little gems going viral, like 200,000-300,000 views on like a piece of content, because they have to compete. You can't be dealing with declining reach on Instagram and then having increasing reach on TikTok. So the free market economic of that, I think, is really beneficial to all creators.
Is it though? I mean, look, sure it is, but in the sense that, like, look, I saw this happen in clubs 15 years ago. We used to just go to clubs until you started seeing guys buying bottles and tables, and then that became the new norm. So you could go to a club on a normal night out, have a great night, make new friends, hang out with guys, girls, whatever your preference is, and you could go out and you could spend, I don't know, $150, $200, right? And that was enough. And you got what you wanted from the situation. But then you start going to clubs in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and people are buying bottles. Now the stakes are higher. Because when you're in the club and you're trying to attract people and trying to attract that attention, you've now got to drop $2,000-$3,000 to make that club hot. So what TikTok came along and did is they said, hey, listen, we're a club with only tables. Like, we are going to make sure that you're going to get the kind of rush that, you know, if you went to a normal club like Instagram, you might go viral once a year. Here, you're going to have table service every single time you pull up here, which is that you're going to have content go viral on such a freakingly regular basis that you're going to get used to the dopamine hit that we give you, because I'm sure there is a correlation between the number of times and the amount that you go viral in terms of reach and the kind of dopamine release that you get. And if you're getting higher highs from TikTok, even if you don't see them, even if you don't know who they are, even if they're kind of fictitious and anonymous and they don't actually show up at your candle store, at your yacht rentals, you know, whatever it may be, they don't show up at your business. But the fact that these clips are going viral means that the people that do show up at your business and then go and find you on TikTok, it gives them even more social proof that you're the hottest brand in doing what you do.
You know, I don't even think they'd have to do that much to do it. Like, I see this from like clients that we have, people that are producing content. Once you start, like, you must have seen this. Once, for example, I have a client that has a podcast. Once they go viral 3 times, and think of someone that's never done it on any platform. On TikTok doesn't have to keep selling them. I now physically, it's like trying to hold back a pit bull with a piece of string to tell them not to, like, oh, I just want to go all in on TikTok now. Like, that's it. They're sold. They're fully addicted to the drug. At that point, TikTok could like keep it the same, whatever, even if it just is, that's how TikTok is, and they're not trying to like inflate accounts. That, I think, the human element of just finding something that works, because, you know, like, we perhaps know a little more. Just because it works doesn't mean it'll work tomorrow. But 9 times out of 10, when I run into someone, like, we are creatures of habit, and someone that's spent like the last 5 years on Instagram amounted, and you said it yourself, like 5,000 followers, and then but when you physically switch over to TikTok, numbers like 10,000 and 100,000 enter your head, just because of what you've seen. That in and of itself they didn't have to like they only had to do it once, and now that kind of expectation is set, and it's so difficult to keep people away from those results because they are such. And I like what we're talking about because it's more so even, are these results short-lived? Like, is it a good idea to invest all of your time here? Like, TikTok's now going through what Facebook did in front. They're in front of the government in the US, and we're about to see how that comes out. I think if they pass it or get past this stage, which they probably will, then it becomes a whole different animal.
Well, I think that the big paradigm to investigate here, dude, is addiction. So literally, the last meme that I saw on Instagram before I came on this call was a couple with this. They were on a golf course, and then there was a third person there, a guy who was clearly like visiting the golf course for the first day. And just before he hits the ball, he goes, "You know what, guys, this has been fun. Thanks for the invite, but I don't think golf is for me. I'll just hit this last one and be out." Then he hits the golf ball, and it lands on the green right next to the hole. And he turns around and he goes, "Guys, I'm going to give up everything for this feeling again." He goes, "I'm going to mess up my time management with my family. I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on equipment and green fees. I'm just going to come back here for the rest of my life until I die for that feeling again." And I think that's what happens. And you and I know this to be almost gospel truth, conspiracies aside. The way that social media platforms influence your behavior in their direction is by giving you reach specifically when they want you to have it as opposed to when you need it. So when Instagram launches Instagram Reels, they're going to give you massive reach on Reels because they've launched it and they want to get it established. They want to make it part of the normal habits for the majority of users. So they start telling you, "Hey, we're giving more reach on Reels than we are on posts on your wall." So what do people start doing in search of reach? They start changing their behavior accordingly. Now, all of a sudden, if Instagram says, "Hey, we're going to give reach to Instagram Reels that have got more polls on them or more stickers," what are people going to do? Because they're constantly chasing that unicorn, being like, "You know what, I'll do whatever it is to get that kind of reach." Literally, if they turned around tomorrow and said, "Hey, Reels is now not going to get the reach, it's back over to posts," people will just go where the attention is. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you're neither here nor there as to where you get your attention from, why not just do it? It's not a problem. But the reality is, it's like you're constantly then chasing them and what rules they dictate as they dangle that carrot in front of you, where they ask you to like jump on one leg or bark like a dog. You're just going to do it. Like, I'm not going to do it because I know that there's a massive upside on TikTok. And for my own personal and commercial reasons, I've not been able to dedicate the resources to go and grow on that platform. But a lot of motherfuckers are going to do it, to be honest.
Chicken and egg question for you. So since I've known you, even 2017, 2018, you were producing very like short videos and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think what came first? People wanted to see Reels, which is we shaped the culture, or the platforms prioritized Reels and shaped our culture, and now we want Reels as a result of we're seeing them more?
Well, I can tell you the contribution that both made.
Okay, contribution. I want to know which one came first.
Well, if you want to know which one came first, the technical answer when it comes to just looking at a unit of attention would be that the short form content came first and flourished on Instagram. Because when I first started off in media, which was pre-social media, people used to sell 10-second slots, 15-second slots, 30-second slots on television. So along would come a dog food or fairy liquid or whatever. They'd buy a slot, and then in that time, their creative department in central London would put together a 30-second TV advert that would run between a soap opera or a variety show, and would persuade you that fairy liquid is the one for you. So people's ability to consume short form content came first. And the more the content is asking of you in terms of, well, maybe not asking of you, because when content inspires you, people will consume it for a long time. But if a piece of content is asking you for your credit card or for cash in your pocket or for you to make a choice, typically people are like, okay, you can only sell to me for so long. I'd rather that for 3.5 minutes, 7 brands try and sell me for 30 seconds each than one brand try to sell me for 3.5 minutes. So the short form content came first. And then what allowed it to flourish and find its even kilt right now, which it does, is that we had ultra short form content in the form of Vine, which was 6 seconds. That was short lived. Then we had ultra long form content, which we still have on YouTube and Netflix where it's appropriate. But long form content often requires much more planning and much more technical skill, which is the reason why it's flourishing on paid platforms like Netflix more so than YouTube. And then not that it sits in the middle, but what we would call a happy medium would be sub 60-second short form content. And short form content, why? Because it sits in your hand the way if you're watching on video right now, you'll see I'm holding my phone in a natural way because my hand is naturally vertical. So a phone sits in it naturally vertically. If all of our hands as human beings were set on right angles and we held phones on right angles, then this is the way the content would have played out. But we hold it this way, we hold our hands straight, and so naturally the orientation of the video has gone in that direction. And what's incredible about that is that although we've watched TV on a 3x4 format or a 16:9 format, effectively since the beginning of TV, because humans are so creative, they are able to make content and assets that command the space that it occupies. So if the rules are 9x16, aka portrait, aka tall content, long content, like vertical content, human beings will find a way to make that happen. That's why when you look at all of these podcasts right now, in some cases, you'll have the podcast guest in the top of the phone like it's a domino. Yeah. And at the bottom of the phone, you've got the person asking the question and then nodding along. So humans will find ways to adapt. Do you know what I mean? Whether you ask them to etch on the inside of caves or you ask them to make content in the metaverse, they will figure out a way to appropriate that content for the platform. Which again, not to do a shameless plug here, but that's why we talk about plan, produce, publish, promote. Because you can distill down every activity that a human being needs to do. And when you ultimately follow that to the end of its natural road, you're going to end up at one of 4 signposts. You're either planning content, you're producing it, you're publishing it, or you're promoting it.
Yeah.
It didn't necessarily answer the question as to which one came first, but in the context of the history of media, visual, video media, like motion picture, then yeah, of course the short form came first.
I really enjoyed with short form content recently as well, like how much businesses are respecting the way, or even just not even respecting, tapping into the way that we consume content. So I think more recently it was Netflix. In that, I don't know if you have this habit. I know I have this habit, but more from a data perspective, we know that people tend to have this habit. And Schultz point this out, like you're more likely to watch 10 2-minute videos than you are to watch 1 20-minute videos. But the 2-minute will make you commit to the 20-minute. In that,
yeah.
And what I'm talking about specifically is Netflix have now released, if you've got the mobile app, you can view shorts. So what I do is I'll start on a platform. Like if I'm going into addiction mode, like down the rabbit hole for like 20-25 minutes, I'll start on a short form, like my appetizers, which it might be TikTok, like, all right, cool, 7-second hits. Well, no, that's a lie. I'll start on Instagram, check what my family and friends are doing. Great. That's like really short, couple stories, flick. Then move on to slightly longer shit, which is TikTok. And then once I've had my fill, like I've seen for me specifically, I've seen some stuff on tech, and then I've seen some stuff on advertising, and like I'll see some car stuff. My brain will mentally commit to a topic that I want to actually know about. So I'm making the decision and then I'll go over to YouTube, and then I'm watching the long form on what I've just seen a bunch of short forms on. And what I really like is like platforms like Netflix and Prime are now just giving you the option to just have a shuffle preview of all the short forms, knowing that what you're actually trying to do is, instead of having decision fatigue where you're just like, just get you watching, watching content is the drug. Like once you start watching, it's very difficult to stop watching. And what you just said about the commitment is what actually triggered the thought, which is if I can get you to commit to 3 seconds, then it's going to be way easier to get you to commit to 7. And then I get you to commit to 15. Then the 1-minute commitment isn't so crazy. And the next thing you know, you're like 16 episodes into a binge of some show, and boom, how did we get here?
Yeah.
Which is like,
I think what you're going to see with that, just to our point of AI. Sorry, please finish.
No, my last point was it's the same thing with like even you get someone to commit to 1 cigarette, you probably get them to commit to the 10th packet real quick. But yeah, AI.
Yeah, to that point, like I think that's interesting what you're saying at the moment, because what it does is it lays out a whole bunch of like tasting options in front of you, and then depending on what your palate is feeling that day, you then end up pursuing that. So you'll try, 15 different dishes and go, okay, you know what, today I'm going to go down the, you know, whatever Mexican palette, and then you follow that into long form. And we teach that in the 4 P's of content as well, which is we say, listen, when you start your content journey, you should start off with short form content, the same way that when a brand gets you into its ecosystem, it starts with the lower price items. So when you first get curious about Armani, they'd rather that you buy a belt or some cufflinks like sub £100, so that when it comes to buying a suit, you'll enter that £800 mark. And when it comes to buying that forever winter jacket, you'll spend £3,000. But you start off with what you can afford to risk for an interaction with that. And then you move your way up through the pricing ecosystem. And on the internet, time is money, right? Like attention is currency. So if you can look at someone's videos and be like, oh, every time I watch his YouTube shorts at 59 seconds or under, it's worth it. Oh, they've dropped a 5-minute video. Well, I've consumed 50 1-minute videos. This person's definitely going to be good for a 5-minute video. But what's going to happen is, I don't know how long lived that's going to be, because if you look at the fact that we've now got AI coming in, no one really, there's many memes online of people sitting down to watch Netflix for the night and then falling asleep with the menu in front of them, because they scroll through so many trailers that they actually get decision fatigue, because then it's up to the trailer to convince you that you want to watch the content. Sometimes I've sat down in front of just the homepage of Netflix for 45 minutes, knocked out on the couch, and then gone to bed, because I couldn't figure out what to watch. So what's going to happen with AI is now probably going to sit down with you and say, when you sit down on TV and be like, hey, listen, so you know what, today you had this meeting about this meeting about that, about the banking collapse. We've got this kind of content. If you want to continue going down this rabbit hole, would that be appropriate for you? Rather than go through 20 trailers and then decide what's the most appropriate one for you, it will leapfrog you a stage forward. It's the same as with Google versus ChatGPT, right? You ask Google a question and it gives you 10 potential doors, of which behind one of them, there's a very likelihood it'll be your answer. What Netflix will then do is say, hey, listen. Sorry, I was going to say, so then it will scale your options, but then it will also have a responsibility to sort them. So AI will scale your content, but then it also has a responsibility as a scaler to, therefore it's producing much more content, putting much more content in front of you. It then has a sorting responsibility. Otherwise it ends up killing itself. Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you're right. And it's actually terrifying that you're right, because giving more people just what they want and not giving them the opportunity to explore outside of what their algorithm preference is the reason that the election and the political state of most countries is the way that it is. That's a wild accusation, but we know this from like I think it's I forget, it's something reinforcement, but you go on your feed and you have your own biases reinforced to you because you selected them, you engage with them, platforms trying to keep you or show you more of the same, and then you continue believing, even if you're wrong. If you believe that the earth is flat, Instagram is going to prove to you that it is. You start doing that with the content that you watch on Netflix, and then everything is just a big basically every screen, and it's like the series Black Mirror, right? They called it Black Mirror because when a screen's off, you're just looking at yourself. Like, yeah, that's it. So this is called content that you watch.
This is called the echo chamber effect. Sorry, continue.
There we go.
It's called an echo chamber,
right?
Yeah,
and I think you're right, because the echo chamber is very effective, because it's if all you have to do is stay inside of your own head, not only is it reinforcing what you already think is right, and therefore you think you're even more right. I think that's also a really easy way to get people further addicted to themselves. Ultimately, I think like any form of content that you're watching, if you're not exploring and trying new things, you're just getting addicted. Like we see it in music. I'm sure you see it more than anything in music. Back in the day when like you bought like music used to cost $15.99 for like 7 tracks, and like that cost $15.99 for every track. So I used to have to fall in love with pieces of music irrespective of liking them. Like I think that now a lot of people, I would consider myself a millennial and up, are used to like falling in love with pieces of music that we don't necessarily like on the first listen. I'll give it a 5th try. Whereas one generation onwards, they're not giving something a 5th try. It's very much more a one-hit economy. And I think that it'll play more into that, because it seems that's the trend anyway.
Well, let's wrap it up there. For one thing that we do want to achieve on these episodes is to go a little bit shorter as well. So I think we've achieved that. I know that we're going to speak more in depth about AI, and we spoke about potentially this first episode being how AI is going to be a force accelerant for content creators, because we're seeing it affect different things. But, and this might be because we're not in their worlds, but we're not seeing the optometrist world or the road traffic world or anybody else talking about AI the way that the content community is. And I think that, I mean, at scale that is. So I think that's where we'll pick up on the next one. We've covered kind of a state of social media, and we kind of got our awkwardness out in this first episode, in that first 10, 15 minutes of figuring out, okay, exactly what's the actual ramp that we're going to take the plane off from. We've done it now. And I think on the next episode, we'll definitely get into that. We've never actually said at the end of one episode what the next one's going to be about, and we hope it will be about that. But definitely make sure you join us. What were you about to say, Arjun?
Absolutely nothing, but it's been very fun.
Okay, sorry.
It was a fun first
Yeah,
episode.
I thought I saw you move on it. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, dude. I think we're gonna get, however long this run is, I think we're gonna get a lot out of it. And even actually, if we get the normal algo going, I think these kind of conversations that you and I have, I think we both walk away naturally on the phone with perspectives and reframes that then actually help us in the real world. I know when I go out and I consult, a lot of the stuff that we speak about on the rare times that we do speak actually becomes part of like my kind of like day-to-day dialogue with clients. So big up to everyone who's been listening. I want to give a shout out to everybody on the ALGO group. You're on the ALGO group, of course, aren't you, Arjun?
I am I'm much more of a lurker on that group than I. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I've seen you chime in now and again. So shout out to Alex, Vic, Bal, Jessel, Kishan, Kyron, Neil, Sal, and Wes. We probably will have a couple of extra people jumping on there in the coming weeks as well. But yep, Algo's back. A lot going on with Raj Architecture. Like I mentioned, man, I mean, I may as well just tell you, like, we shot Allen Iverson, the basketball player, Gary Vaynerchuk, Ryan Serhant. We've been out nonstop, and because it is Ramadan here in the UAE at the moment, a lot of the physical shooting had to be done pre-Ramadan, which means we're in hardcore edit mode. Prior to that, I was in Amsterdam. I did record an episode with Alex, but there was all sorts of audio issues with it, so we ended up scrapping it. So effectively, I think the last time anyone's heard anything on this channel is February. But what we'll do is we'll change up the formats. Arjun and I will jump in every few days and we'll drop these bombs. And I think what will happen is as well, Arjun, we talked about getting into more of like the first principle stuff, like stuff that we've done over the last 10 years and like forever lessons. So I want to be able to share them with people, even if they are over shorter episodes. But for now, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you kind of like, subscribe. Shares mean a tremendous amount to us. And from myself and Arjun, take care. Peace. We'll see you on the next episode.
Peace out.